I'm starting to become something of a Metroidvania aficionado. I played all of what most fans would consider the essentials, and I'm starting to branch out into the lesser known titles. Games that are either not quite as polished or start to toe that line of, is this even really a Metroidvania at all? There's been no shortage of new entries to the genre, so I've started to get quite picky with the ones that I do play. Metroid Dread took the world by storm last month, and was released to primarily glowing reviews. It's not very surprising then that Unsighted completely flew under the radar when it was released just a few days prior, and that's a damn shame, because Unsighted is the best indie game I've played in quite a while. With its vast map to explore, difficult but rewarding combat, unique time system, and overall level of polish, Unsighted stands toe-to-toe with some of the best in the genre. And yes, you can pet the dogs. The game is reminiscent of the top-down Zeldas, mixed with the combat and aesthetic of indie classic Hyperlight Drifter. Now I know you can't really watch a review anymore without the game being described with other games, but trust me, this game is worthy of those comparisons. The combat is fast-paced and tense. You can find and craft a variety of weapons throughout the game, with swords and axes as your melee options, and plenty of ranged weapons to choose from as well. But the best way to dish out damage is also the riskiest: the parry. You'll soon find that you're pretty much required to parry enemy attacks in order to do decent damage. Now I suck at parrying in pretty much every game that has it, but I found myself able to pull it off pretty consistently here. Enemy attacks are very well telegraphed, and you aren't overly punished for messing up the timing either. There's a pretty generous window, where if your parry timing is off, the enemy's attack will still be deflected, but then they'll almost instantly attempt to attack you again. This gives you another chance to get the timing right, and avoids dragging out the combat for too long. Once you finally nail the timing, the enemy will be stunned, allowing you to deal some heavy damage. This is pretty manageable in 1v1 fights, but the difficulty quickly piles on when you're forced to juggle multiple foes at once. Some of the game's most gratifying moments come from parrying attacks from 2 or 3 enemies in quick succession, and then doling out some punishment to them one by one. There's also a great risk versus reward factor in refilling your health syringe. You can fill it up by killing off enemies, so if you're one hit away from dying, your best option might be to get aggressive and pick off an enemy or two. The combat in this game is hard. Some of the bosses feel impossible on their first try, and you can generally only take about 2 or 3 hits before you die. Luckily, there are also plenty of ways to customize your character with the game's chip system. You've almost certainly seen something like this in a game before. You have a limited number of slots, and you'll find perks to equip, such as health, stamina, and strength buffs. And if that's not enough, you can find or craft cogs, which act as temporary one-shot boosts, such as buffing your next 20 attacks, blocking the next few attacks, and auto-reviving you once if you die. If you don't want to go into battle alone, you can find and recruit a few different pups to battle alongside you. Having an extra set of teeth in your battle makes a world of difference, and forming a bond with these good boys brings some solace in an otherwise depressing game. Given that the combat's level of polish is comparable to something like Hyperlight Drifter, it's kind of amazing how the game is also a full-blown Metroidvania/Zelda-like. There are 5 dungeons to explore, with each giving you a new item or ability that will open up new paths to goodies in the game's massive interconnected overworld. There's also a surprising amount of platforming, which I wouldn't normally expect from a game in this perspective. It's really well implemented too. You can even find a spinner item that functions almost exactly like Twilight Princess's spinner, except you can also use it off rails to move around the world faster. There are even rail platforming segments. Seriously, I'm pretty floored that Studio Pixelpunk, a tiny studio consisting of only 2 people, was able to put out such a polished product with so many different mechanics. This brings me to Unsighted's most unique and controversial feature: its timer system. The player, as well as many NPCs you encounter, all have a timer attached to them. This represents how much time they have left before becoming unsighted, a transformation into an animalistic killing machine that will attack you on sight. If you, the player, run out of time, it's essentially a permadeath, and you'll need to start over. But hear me out. There are enough ways to extend your own timer, such that even the slowest players should never experience this. The game took me just under 9 hours to complete at a pretty relaxing pace, exploring everything that I wanted to, but not quite going for 100%. The game starts you off with enough juice to last you over 5 hours. As a reward for exploration and many optional puzzles, you'll find Meteor Dust, which can extend your timer, or any other NPC's timer, for 24 minutes, 24 hours in the game's universe. At my save right before the final boss, I have 15 Meteor Dusts left, meaning that I have about 6 hours to spare. You can also find a certain NPC later on that will allow you to purchase Meteor Dust, and if that's not enough, you receive a message when you have 100 minutes left, beckoning you to an area of the map in which you can extend your time even further. There, you'll find an NPC that will let you sacrifice any NPC's time to extend your own. You can even choose to sacrifice that very NPC, which is just hilarious, although it only pisses him off, and doing it twice triggers an optional boss fight. The idea here is that you should have no trouble evading a permadeath, but you will be faced with some morally ambiguous choices in order to do so, because while it's unlikely that you'll ever run out of time, it'll be nearly impossible to finish the game while keeping every NPC alive on your first try. And based on who you save, you can unlock multiple different endings, with the best ending reserved for a playthrough in which no one becomes unsighted. From what I've seen, this mechanic has really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. A lot of gamers, and Metroidvania players especially, like to take their time exploring these massive worlds, combing them for every last little secret. So then there's nothing wrong with dismissing this game simply because it has a built-in timer, right?
No! Especially if you're a big baby who wears diapers!
Like the fish says, this timer system actually makes Unsighted a much better game. While it may certainly be a bold and controversial design choice, it's anything but tacked on. More than any other game I've played since perhaps Undertale, Unsighted is a game where I felt like every action that I made was important. After the intro, you're given a general ordering of dungeons you should visit, then off you go. You're left to roam a massive, Metroidvania-esque map without any hand-holding or lengthy tutorials. You'll need to wisely allocate your time between completing the game's 5 main dungeons and using newfound abilities to explore the map for Meteor Dust and materials to upgrade your weapons. This level of agency and respect you're given as a capable player was truly refreshing. At first, Meteor Dust is scarce, and there are an overwhelming number of ways to use it. You can use it to keep your favorite NPCs alive for longer, perhaps because giving them Meteor Dust allows you to get a discount on upgrading your weapons. Or maybe you just want to see Tobias finally create an arm that will let him pet his dogs without accidentally stabbing them. Whatever the case may be, offering Meteor Dust improves your relationship with a given NPC, and maxing it out provides various benefits, such as new items and shop discounts. You can also give one particular NPC some Meteor Dust to craft new syringes, which allow you to fully heal. And because the combat is so difficult, these are pretty essential to your survival. Budding sociopaths and overly practical people may just opt to hoard their Meteor Dust for later, when your own timer starts to dwindle. Despite your best efforts, you probably won't succeed in saving everyone on your first go. Every NPC death is a direct result of your choices and actions, setting a gloomy and depressing undertone for the game. It gives your adventure that rare spark of personality, and it reminded me a little bit of Majora's Mask. Another similarity to Majora's Mask is that the player is rewarded on subsequent playthroughs for their knowledge of the world. You can use this experience to optimize your path through the map, finding extra Meteor Dust early on and skipping some parts of the map entirely. The game is designed to have multiple solutions to many of its puzzles and obstacles. One dungeon grants you an ice grenade, allowing you to freeze water to make a path across. But through careful exploration, you can find the cryojet, which acts as another weapon that can fulfill the same purpose. The spinner item lets you break these giant rocks, but you can also do so with a grenade. The game has a clever crafting system in which you can find blueprints that will tell you how to create certain items, but you're still allowed to craft on your own. If you know the ingredients to make something, you can do it without needing the right blueprint. So if I happen to know how to build, say, a hook shot, either from a previous playthrough or even by using a guide, I don't have to wait for the final few dungeons to get my hands on them. I can craft a double hook shot as soon as I have the materials to do so. And you can imagine all the fun sequence breaking I can do from there. No glitches required. Or maybe I decide I don't need to spend Meteor Dust to create more healing syringes, because I've already become so damn good at the game. This open-ended design meshes really well with the game's timer. Players are encouraged to try a second or third playthrough, in which they can use their knowledge and improved skills to optimize their run. Now you can mix up the dungeon order a bit and find as much Meteor Dust as possible to keep all of your friends alive. After a depressing first playthrough of slowly watching every NPC die, it's a supremely rewarding feeling to save everyone through your own actions. This emotional roller coaster would be impossible if the devs hadn't been bold enough to include this timer mechanic. And after all of this, if I still haven't convinced you that it's a good thing, you could just turn on Explorer mode, which lets you tweak the game's difficulty and slow the game's timer to a crawl. Beyond the main story, Unsighted even has a few add-ons to keep you busy. There's an optional sequence of events that lead to a secret, harder version of the final boss. If you have any friends, the game has a co-op mode that allows you to play the campaign with one other person. It's not one of those BS co-ops where the second player gets to play as a cursor either. There's also a boss rush mode, as well as a unique mode called Dungeon Raid. I haven't experimented with this much, but it's basically a roguelike mode where you fight through waves of enemies in procedurally generated areas and find chips and upgrades every so often. It seems like a perfect way to spend some more time with the game if you enjoyed the combat and movement. Unsighted is a stunning game, from its beautiful pixel art scenes and environments to its shocking degree of polish. Fans of Zelda and Metroidvanias will feel right at home playing this game, but you'd better come expecting a challenge. If you're looking for something chill and stress-free to play, this game will probably just upset you. But if you're looking for a massive Zelda-like world to explore, with challenging combat and a need to manage your time and resources, Unsighted is a game that will satisfy like few others can.